You don't expect it to happen today. The morning begins with ordinary sounds, the distant hum of traffic, the faint clatter of dishes, the way sunlight filters across the floor. But then, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. There's a pause in your mind, a subtle tug at your attention, and an inner nudge that says this is not like any other morning. Something is waiting, something deliberate, and it carries weight, even before you know what it is. You find the letter lying in a place you wouldn't have thought to look. Perhaps it slipped beneath a stack of papers, or tucked carefully in a drawer where it seems to almost hide itself, as if it knows the gravity of what it contains. There's no grand announcement, no sudden knock at the door, just the quiet presence of intention, demanding recognition. From the first moment you see it, you understand that this is different. Someone has taken the time to collect thoughts, feelings, and reflection, and has shaped them with courage into a tangible form. The act of writing it down, of putting everything into a letter, carries more weight than the words themselves. You sense the effort that went into it, the careful selection of phrasing, the pauses to ensure clarity, the courage it took to confront not just what was felt, but what needed to be said. This wasn't easy. That much is evident even before you open the envelope. There is honesty in its presence, and even the decision to send it speaks volumes. It is a deliberate effort to bridge distance, time, and uncertainty, a conscious choice to reach you in a way that words spoken in passing could never achieve. When you finally break the seal and unfold the pages, you notice the rhythm of the writing. There are moments of clarity, short sentences that land like quiet strikes of truth. There are longer passages, flowing with reflection, memory, and subtle emotion. You feel the pauses between words, the spaces deliberately left for thought and breath. Every line carries both vulnerability and courage, as though the person writing is exposing themselves fully, trusting that you will read not just the words, but the energy behind them. As you begin to read, you realize the letter is more than a recounting of events. It is a mirror, a reflection of growth, struggle, and awareness. You notice acknowledgement of mistakes, of absences, of moments when intentions fell short or communication failed. But these are not confessions designed to elicit sympathy, nor are they complaints disguised as vulnerability. They are truths, laid bare, delivered with a quiet humility that demands nothing but recognition. The writer does not ask you to respond in a particular way, they only invite you to witness the full weight of their effort and sincerity. The emotional texture of the letter is complex. At times, it carries gentle longing, a soft ache of distance bridged only by words. At other times, it conveys clarity, reflection, and the calm observation that comes from facing one's own truths without evasion. You feel the care that went into each line, the deliberate consideration of how you might receive it, and the courage required to send it without expectation or pressure. It is rare to encounter communication so fully human. Unguarded, intentional, and profoundly present. As you read on, you notice the layers of accountability woven throughout. Every memory, every acknowledgement of absence or oversight, is paired with recognition of responsibility. There is no attempt to rationalize or shift blame. Instead, there is a commitment to truth, a willingness to confront difficulty, and an invitation to engage with the message from a place of presence rather than reaction. You realize that the letter is not just about sharing feelings, it is about creating a space where awareness, effort, and alignment can coexist. This realization begins to shift something within you. Old hesitations, unspoken frustrations, and the subtle ache of distance start to soften. You feel the weight of intentional effort pressing gently, not as obligation but as possibility. It is a reminder that courage and reflection can be transformative when offered without expectation, and that even the smallest act of deliberate communication carries the potential to shift perspective, awareness, and understanding. There is also a subtle urgency embedded in the letter. Not the frantic energy of demand, but a quiet insistence: this moment, this reading, this presence of attention is significant. The timing is not accidental. You sense that what is written here matters because it is arriving at precisely the right moment, when awareness, readiness, and reflection can meet the effort behind the words. And in that recognition, you begin to feel the depth of connection, not simply the words on the page, but the deliberate energy, the courage, and the vulnerability that make them resonate. As the letter unfolds further, you notice its gentleness and firmness coexisting. There are invitations to reflection, acknowledgments of shared growth, and gentle guidance toward understanding. There is honesty about past challenges, and recognition of the present moment's importance. It is a dialogue in writing, a conversation carried across distance and circumstance, inviting not immediate response, but deep consideration and engagement. The writer trusts that you will meet their effort with awareness, and that trust carries its own gravity. A weight of responsibility and respect. By the time you reach the final paragraphs, a quiet clarity begins to settle in. The urgency has transformed into resonance, the vulnerability into understanding, and the reflection into alignment. You are left with more than words, a sense of presence, courage, and human connection that lingers in your awareness long after the reading ends. The letter has done what it was meant to do, not dictate, demand, or manipulate, but to offer the deliberate gift of intention, courage, and authenticity. And as you fold the letter back into its envelope or set it aside, you feel it ripple gently through your chest and mind. It is a reminder that true communication is not about speed or drama, but about presence, reflection, and the courage to reach across distance with honesty and care. It is a moment to pause, to witness, and to honor both their effort and your own capacity to engage fully with authenticity. This letter is not the end, it is a marker, a touchstone, and a quiet opening for reflection, understanding, and connection that will continue to echo long after the envelope is closed. The moment you think you understand the weight of the letter, a new realization comes: it is not just the words themselves that matter, but the space they occupy within your attention. As you sit quietly, holding the paper in your hands, you feel a subtle hum of energy beneath the surface of your awareness. It is almost imperceptible, yet undeniable, a reminder that this communication is alive, deliberate, and meant to be felt as much as it is read. The handwriting, the pauses, the careful line breaks, all of it carries intention, and the presence of that intention reaches beyond what words alone could ever convey. You notice the first layer of honesty immediately. There is no attempt to dress the past in sentimentality or to soften truths unnecessarily. Instead, there is clarity. Acknowledgement of moments where actions fell short, of times when words were left unspoken, and of occasions where absence or distraction caused unintended distance. These acknowledgments do not demand forgiveness or force reconciliation, they simply exist, offered fully and without expectation. There is a courage in that kind of honesty, one that is difficult to witness yet impossible to ignore. As you read further, the emotional depth begins to reveal itself. It is quiet, persistent, and deliberate, as if the letter were designed to move in layers, to unfold slowly like petals opening toward the sun. There are moments that make your chest tighten, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. Recognition of shared experience, of vulnerability, of growth that has happened on both sides without being spoken aloud until now. You realize that the letter does not merely recount events. It reflects a journey, a consciousness, and an intention to reach you authentically, without manipulation or embellishment. Each paragraph carries a subtle rhythm, alternating between reflection and presence. Short, direct sentences emphasize clarity, while longer passages allow space for thought and contemplation. There are pauses embedded in the phrasing, giving you room to breathe and absorb, as though the writer anticipated the weight of what was being shared and wanted to ensure it landed with care. This is not communication designed to overwhelm, it is communication designed to resonate, to be witnessed, and to create awareness. There is vulnerability woven into every line. You feel it in the acknowledgement of mistakes that were previously ignored, in the quiet sharing of feelings that were previously hidden, and in the deliberate courage it takes to put them on paper. You sense the careful thought behind each word, the quiet negotiation of emotion, and the patience required to present oneself fully without anticipation of immediate response. That vulnerability carries with it power. The power to shift perception, to invite reflection, and to create an emotional space where presence and awareness take precedence over reaction. As you continue, you notice how the letter navigates both responsibility and empathy. It does not excuse behavior or evade impact. Instead, it honors the effects of past actions while also acknowledging intention, circumstance, and growth. There is a fine balance at play. An awareness that truth without empathy can feel cold, yet empathy without acknowledgement can feel hollow. The writer walks this balance carefully, creating a space where understanding and reflection can coexist, allowing you to witness effort and courage without being pulled into defensiveness or reaction. This balance also allows a unique perspective to emerge. You begin to see the letter as more than a communication from another person. It becomes a mirror reflecting your own awareness, patience, and growth. The act of reading it requires you to engage fully, to meet vulnerability with presence, and to honor authenticity with attention. In doing so, you notice patterns you may have overlooked before, subtle shifts in how you have responded to connection, moments where absence was felt more deeply than words can describe, and the ways in which both effort and inattention shaped the contours of your relationship. There is a tenderness in the way reflection is presented. It is not sentimental, nor is it performative. It is deliberate, conscious, and grounded. You feel this tenderness as a subtle warmth in your chest, a gentle expansion that encourages quiet reflection rather than reaction. It is a presence that asks for nothing beyond awareness, yet in doing so, it touches something deep inside you. The recognition that courage and vulnerability, when offered intentionally, carry their own resonance and cannot be ignored. You also sense the letter's subtle guidance. There are no instructions, no explicit directives, only the quiet suggestion to observe, reflect, and consider. The writer trusts your capacity to engage with what is offered, leaving space for discernment and choice. You feel the power of that trust, the weight of responsibility it carries, and the way it amplifies the resonance of the message. It reminds you that connection is not about control, obligation, or immediate resolution, it is about presence, intentionality, and the courage to witness authenticity fully. As you approach the latter part of the letter, the depth of emotion becomes more evident. There are moments of longing, reflection, and subtle vulnerability, balanced with clarity, accountability, and intentionality. You feel both the effort and the courage embedded in these words, the willingness to confront oneself, to acknowledge impact, and to present it without expectation. It is a rare kind of communication, one that asks nothing but presence, yet leaves a lasting impression on both heart and mind. Finally, the letter concludes not with closure, but with a quiet invitation. An acknowledgement of growth, an expression of intention, and a reminder that the act of reaching out carries meaning beyond the content of the words. You are left with a sense of alignment, reflection, and resonance, a feeling that this moment, this reading, this presence of attention, is significant not because of obligation, but because of authenticity, courage, and human effort. You understand, in a way that goes beyond intellect, that connection exists not in what is demanded, but in what is offered fully and received consciously. And as you set the letter aside, the weight of what has been shared lingers. It is not about what must happen next, but about what has already arrived, presence, reflection, and the rare, quiet power of a deliberate human gesture. You feel gratitude for the courage it took to write, for the vulnerability it carries, and for the opportunity to witness authenticity in action. You understand that this communication will resonate far beyond the moment, shaping awareness, perception, and the possibility of connection long after the envelope is closed. You pick up the letter again, and this time, it feels heavier in a way that surprises you. Not physically, but emotionally, as if the weight of courage, vulnerability, and intention embedded in its pages has settled into the space around you. The morning light falls differently across the envelope, brushing the edges with quiet emphasis, as though reminding you that the act of reading is not just about the words, it is about presence, attention, and the conscious awareness of effort. You notice the subtle scent of paper and ink, grounding you in the tactile reality of what has been created, and it makes the words inside feel alive, almost as if they are breathing alongside you. From the very first line, you are drawn into a rhythm that is entirely new. The writing does not beg for attention, nor does it attempt to manipulate your response. Instead, it unfolds deliberately, like someone stepping into the room of your mind with nothing but honesty and a desire to be understood. The opening sentences are not dramatic, yet they strike with quiet authority, signaling that this is not ordinary communication. The writer has faced their own truths, wrestled with discomfort, and now reaches out with an offering of full presence, trusting that you will meet it with the same awareness. As you read on, the letter reveals a careful layering of acknowledgement and reflection. Past actions, missed opportunities, and unspoken tensions are named clearly, without defensiveness or excuses. You sense a profound intentionality in this transparency. The writer has chosen to confront reality honestly, to document their reflection carefully, and to share it with you without the pressure of expectation. There is courage in this act, quiet yet undeniable, and it resonates deeply because it comes from a place of authenticity rather than performance. The emotional texture of the letter begins to deepen, revealing subtle patterns you may not have noticed before. Short, precise sentences punctuate moments of clarity, landing like deliberate touches on your awareness. Longer, flowing passages weave memory, emotion, and insight together, offering space for contemplation. The pacing is unhurried, almost meditative, allowing you to fully absorb the significance of what has been written. You realize that this letter was not composed hastily, it was crafted with intention, patience, and a recognition of the weight it carries in reaching you. There is a vulnerability in every paragraph, but it is tempered with reflection and accountability. The writer does not seek forgiveness, nor do they attempt to shift blame. Instead, they present their truth fully, acknowledging the impact of their actions, the lessons learned, and the moments where growth was possible but not realized. You feel this vulnerability in your chest, a quiet tightening that is neither painful nor overwhelming, but deeply moving. It is a rare experience to witness someone exposing themselves so fully while offering no demand in return. Within the letter, you notice an undercurrent of empathy that flows alongside acknowledgement. Mistakes are recognized, but context and intention are also considered. There is an awareness that human experience is layered and complex, and that understanding requires reflection, patience, and compassion. You begin to see the writing not just as an attempt to communicate, but as an invitation to engage with the full human reality of someone you care about, flaws, courage, vulnerability, and all. As you progress further, the letter seems to take on a rhythm of dialogue, even though it is one-sided. Short, reflective sentences feel like questions, inviting you to consider your own role, reactions, and perceptions. Longer passages offer insight into the writer's inner world, creating a sense of intimacy that goes beyond the page. There is a quiet trust embedded here, a belief that you will engage fully, with awareness and presence, and that the effort taken to write will not be disregarded. This trust carries its own weight, as powerful as any argument or declaration ever could. The tenderness in the writing grows more pronounced as you move deeper into the letter. It is not sentimentality, it is deliberate, grounded care that acknowledges complexity without attempting to simplify it. You sense the writer's intention to communicate honestly while remaining sensitive to the impact of their words. There is patience woven throughout. Patience with themselves, with past circumstances, and with you, the recipient. Reading it, you feel the care, the mindfulness, and the courage required to reach across vulnerability and create space for understanding. Amid these reflections, you notice subtle invitations embedded in the writing. There are no demands, no instructions, and no urgent calls for immediate action. Instead, there is a quiet insistence on presence, a request for attention, and an unspoken hope that the words will be received with awareness and reflection. The letter trusts that you will honor the effort behind it, that you will meet vulnerability with acknowledgement, and that the resonance of intention will shape your perception in ways that extend far beyond the immediate moment. The deeper you read, the more you feel the letter functioning as both mirror and bridge. It reflects the writer's growth, accountability, and courage, while simultaneously inviting you to witness, reflect, and engage with authenticity. Moments of recognition emerge, where you notice past patterns, unspoken emotions, and subtle shifts in perspective. The letter guides your awareness without dictating your response, creating a dynamic exchange of presence across the boundaries of time, distance, and circumstance. Toward the final paragraphs, clarity begins to emerge. The urgency of vulnerability transforms into the resonance of intentionality. What began as a message laden with reflection and courage now settles into a quiet acknowledgement of connection. You feel gratitude, not for an answer, resolution, or closure, but for the opportunity to witness authenticity and engage with effort and honesty. This gratitude is subtle yet profound, settling in your awareness and shaping your sense of connection long after the words have been read. When you finally set the letter aside, it is with a lingering awareness that its impact extends beyond its pages. You sense the imprint of presence, courage, and deliberate effort on your mind and heart. The letter has accomplished more than communication, it has created space for reflection, understanding, and alignment. It has shown you that vulnerability, courage, and authenticity are not transactional, they are transformative. They leave traces, shift perception, and invite connection in ways that persist beyond any immediate interaction. And in that lingering space, you understand something essential: that connection is not about control, obligation, or response. It is about witnessing effort, honoring courage, and engaging with authenticity. The letter has given you an opportunity to experience that truth fully. It has reminded you that true communication requires presence, reflection, and awareness. Not only from the sender but from the recipient as well. It has left an imprint that will echo in your perception, shaping your approach to presence, authenticity, and connection in ways that endure far beyond this single act of reading. The moment you set eyes on the letter again, a strange familiarity washes over you, but it carries with it a weight you hadn't fully felt before. It is not just the weight of words, but of courage, of effort, and of the delicate vulnerability that has been poured into every line. You notice the edges, slightly softened by your previous readings, and yet they seem sharper in intent now, as if reminding you that each word is deliberate, each pause intentional. This is no ordinary letter. It is an act of consciousness, a vessel for reflection, and an invitation to engage not with the past alone, but with the presence it demands from you in this moment. From the very first sentence, you are drawn into a rhythm that feels new. The writer does not rush, there is no urgency in punctuation, no dramatization of feeling. Yet, the subtle insistence beneath the text compels you to pause, breathe, and inhabit each word fully. It is an almost tactile presence, the kind that lingers in your chest and mind simultaneously. The letter asks nothing beyond your awareness, and yet it feels like it carries a quiet force, a gravity that pulls attention without coercion. The initial paragraphs revisit moments previously read, but they are reframed with a nuance you had not noticed before. Small observations, almost like whispered truths, reveal the meticulous attention the writer paid to how events unfolded. The tiny gestures overlooked, the silences that grew louder over time, the subtle ways absence made itself felt. There is no attempt to manipulate emotion, only a presentation of reality as it was experienced, colored with awareness, reflection, and accountability. It is an act of courage, revealing the inner landscape of someone who has faced themselves fully before reaching across the divide to you. As you move further, the letter begins to reveal an extraordinary layering of reflection and human tenderness. Short, precise sentences punctuate clarity, each one landing like a gentle nudge to your awareness. Longer, flowing passages offer space for immersion, for contemplation, for the feeling of the writer's presence as though they were sitting across from you, speaking quietly, but with deliberate intent. The structure itself feels intentional. The pauses, the ebb and flow of emotion, the way paragraphs breathe, all designed not for effect, but to ensure understanding and resonance. The emotional texture deepens gradually, carrying a resonance that feels almost corporeal. Moments that once simply conveyed regret now pulse with recognition of effort, responsibility, and the courage it takes to confront one's own missteps. There is a rhythm here that is deliberate. Acknowledgement, reflection, vulnerability, and presence, moving in a cadence that mirrors the human heart's ability to receive, understand, and process honesty. You feel the subtle tension and release as you move through each section, a quiet echo of the vulnerability embedded in the act of writing itself. The letter does not shy away from responsibility. There are acknowledgments of failures, miscommunications, and moments where understanding fell short. Yet these admissions are paired with insight, growth, and a careful awareness of the consequences. The writer does not plead for forgiveness or demand reconciliation. Instead, they offer their experience fully, allowing you to witness the act of facing oneself with honesty. There is profound power in this approach, because it creates a space where vulnerability meets presence, where authenticity carries more weight than any expectation of reaction. As you progress, you notice how the letter subtly guides reflection without coercion. There are passages that feel like questions posed to your own heart and mind, inviting you to consider your reactions, your own growth, and the ways in which your presence has shaped shared experiences. This dialogue, unspoken, yet alive, creates an intimacy that transcends the page. It is a rare form of communication that engages both intellect and emotion, leaving room for awareness, contemplation, and deep human connection. Tenderness permeates every paragraph, though it is never sentimental. The care behind each word is tangible, a patience cultivated through reflection, a humility born of facing one's own shortcomings, and a courage to present truth in its raw, unvarnished form. You feel the energy behind these choices, the quiet attention to your capacity to receive, and the deliberate avoidance of manipulation or performative emotion. It is a demonstration of presence in its purest form, an offering of consciousness, vulnerability, and trust. Within the letter, you also detect subtle threads of continuity and growth. The writer reflects not only on shared history, but on their own internal journey. The evolution of awareness, understanding, and emotional capacity that has led to this very act of communication. These reflections are layered gently within the narrative, never overshadowing the message, but enhancing it, creating resonance that encourages you to see the broader patterns, the subtle lessons, and the ways in which human effort manifests in thoughtful, intentional action. As the letter approaches its final sections, the emotional resonance shifts from tension to clarity. The urgency of vulnerability settles into the quiet strength of intentionality. The act of writing, of reflecting, and of reaching out becomes fully apparent. It is not about resolving the past or shaping the future, but about the deliberate offering of presence, honesty, and courage. You feel the impact of this realization ripple through your awareness, leaving a deep sense of alignment, gratitude, and recognition. And when you finally place the letter down, you are left with a lingering sense of presence, an echo of vulnerability and courage that refuses to dissipate. It is not closure, it is awareness, a living testament to the transformative power of authentic communication, patience, and intentional effort. You feel gratitude for having witnessed it, for having engaged with the depth of human experience laid bare, and for the opportunity to meet honesty with reflection. This imprint will not fade quickly, it will shape your awareness, influence your capacity to connect, and remain a subtle, enduring guide in your perception of connection and human effort. In this quiet aftermath, you understand something essential: true connection is not transactional. It is not about expectation or response. It is about presence, awareness, and the courage to face truth, both in oneself and in another. The letter has given you more than words. It has given you the rare gift of intentional, conscious engagement. It reminds you that vulnerability, reflection, and authenticity are forces that cannot be ignored, and that the resonance they carry endures long after the paper is folded and the room returns to silence. There's a stillness that greets you when you pick up the letter a second time, different from the first reading. It's quieter now, but heavier in a way that demands attention, not just to the words, but to the energy behind them. You sense the presence of someone fully present, someone who has distilled thoughts, feelings, regrets, and hopes into sentences that carry the weight of intention. The paper feels warmer in your hands than it did before, as if it has absorbed some of the writer's courage, patience, and vulnerability, and it hums with the resonance of effort. The first words you read this time feel like an anchor in your chest. They are not dramatic, but deliberate, the kind of phrasing that stops you mid-breath. There is a subtle insistence that you witness their reflection fully, that you feel the layers of struggle, care, and attention that were required to put these words on paper. You realize immediately that the act of writing was a confrontation with self, a deliberate walk through discomfort, and an offering to you that is free from expectation yet weighted with honesty. As you continue, you notice how the letter balances acknowledgement and observation. Past actions are recognized without dramatization, without blame, and without attempts to soften or distort the truth. There is a quiet strength in the way each memory is recounted, mistakes, missteps, moments of absence, all presented as truth to be witnessed rather than as guilt to be assigned. This level of intentional clarity is rare. It carries a subtle power because it asks for presence and engagement rather than reaction. You feel the weight of that request, the quiet pressure of authenticity, and the rare gift of being trusted with unguarded honesty. Each paragraph seems to breathe, with rhythm that mirrors the emotional landscape. Short sentences punctuate reflection, landing with clarity, while longer passages flow in a cadence that feels almost like a conversation. Pauses in the phrasing allow space for your mind to catch up with the emotional weight of the words. You sense the deliberate structuring of the letter. Every line, every break, every pause has been placed with purpose, designed to be received fully, slowly, and attentively. It is more than a letter, it is a deliberate exercise in presence and connection. The emotional texture is complex and layered. There are moments that make your chest tighten, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. Recognition of courage, recognition of effort, recognition of a human being willing to expose their inner world to you without pretense or expectation. Vulnerability courses through the sentences, yet it is tempered by reflection and accountability. The writer does not simply confess, they observe, consider, and invite you to witness, not to judge, not to forgive, not to respond immediately, but to perceive the effort for what it is, deliberate, authentic, and unrepeatable. As you read deeper, a subtle empathy begins to emerge, not just for the writer, but for yourself. You notice your own patience, your own capacity to witness, and your own growth in being able to receive honesty without defensiveness. The letter functions as a mirror, reflecting not only the intentions of the writer but also your own readiness, awareness, and capacity to engage with authenticity. There is an interplay here, a quiet dance between effort and presence, courage and reflection, vulnerability and discernment. The act of reading becomes as much about self-awareness as about understanding the other. You begin to notice the deliberate care embedded in small details, the choice of words, the pacing of thoughts, and the gentle acknowledgement of shared history. There is humility in the writing, a quiet acceptance of imperfections, and a willingness to confront difficult truths without dramatizing them. You feel the effort in these choices, the patience to articulate thoughts clearly, the courage to expose emotion, and the intent to communicate not only feelings but awareness and accountability. Every line resonates because it has been built with care, and every pause allows you to absorb the resonance without pressure. There is a quiet invitation embedded within the message. It does not demand forgiveness, reconciliation, or immediate response. Instead, it asks for your presence and attention, your conscious awareness of effort, and your capacity to meet courage with acknowledgement. This is the rare kind of urgency that exists not in pushing for reaction, but in creating space for alignment, reflection, and understanding. You sense that timing matters. That the letter arrived now because the writer trusted your readiness, and because the alignment of attention, awareness, and presence could occur in this precise moment. As you move through the middle sections, the depth of reflection becomes clear. The writer revisits moments of miscommunication, tension, and distance, but these are framed not as accusations or complaints, but as reflections on shared experience. There is an acknowledgement of how the past shaped both of you, and how understanding that context is necessary for presence in the present. You begin to feel the subtle power of this framing. It creates resonance, understanding, and alignment, while allowing space for you to process without pressure. The act of reading becomes active, participatory, and profoundly human. The tenderness in the letter grows gradually, like sunlight filtering through a window. There is a softness in the tone, an undercurrent of care and intention that permeates the entire message. You feel it in the gentle phrasing, the deliberate pauses, and the careful weaving of reflection and observation. This tenderness is not sentimental, it is deliberate, grounded, and earned. It carries with it the energy of effort, the courage to confront oneself, the patience to craft clarity, and the trust to release it into your hands without demand or expectation. By the time you reach the final sections, a quiet clarity has settled in your mind. You notice a sense of alignment between intention and presence, reflection and courage, vulnerability and accountability. The letter has accomplished what it was meant to do. It has created a bridge across distance, time, and circumstance, offering both awareness and space. You recognize that connection is not about obligation or action, it is about presence, attention, and the resonance of deliberate effort. And when you finally set the letter aside, the energy lingers. You feel it not as pressure, but as a gentle imprint, a reminder that courage, reflection, and authenticity cannot be ignored. You carry the quiet power of the message in your awareness, your perception, and your heart. It leaves you with gratitude, not only for their effort, but for the opportunity to witness courage, meet vulnerability with presence, and engage with authenticity in its most human form. This moment becomes a marker. Not an ending, but a threshold. It is a quiet testament to the transformative power of deliberate communication, intentional reflection, and authentic connection. You feel the subtle but undeniable truth, effort, when offered without expectation, carries resonance far beyond the words themselves, leaving a mark that echoes through your awareness, shaping perception, reflection, and the way you approach connection in all its forms. The letter rests in front of you, familiar now, yet each time it is opened, it reveals layers you hadn't noticed before. This morning, the sunlight strikes differently, spilling across the page in a way that almost feels like it's highlighting the weight of each word. It's subtle, the kind of shift that might go unnoticed if you weren't paying attention, but it resonates deeply within you. You realize, even before reading, that this is not merely about what is written. It is about the act of presence, the attention you bring to it, and the readiness of your heart to receive what was offered with deliberate courage. From the first line, the letter carries a tone that is almost intimate in its quiet insistence. It doesn't shout, demand, or dramatize. Instead, it feels like a hand extended across the distance, steady and unwavering, asking only that you notice and feel. You sense immediately that the person who wrote this is not attempting to manipulate or impress, they are offering honesty in its raw, unpolished form. There is courage here, threaded through every sentence, that reaches beyond the paper and touches something deep inside you, the capacity to witness without judgment, to absorb without defense, and to recognize authenticity when it appears. As you read the first few paragraphs, you begin to see a pattern of reflection intertwined with vulnerability. The writer revisits moments that were challenging, moments where silence or misunderstanding caused unspoken pain. But these are not recounted to guilt or shame you, rather, they are observations, reflections, and acknowledgments meant to create clarity. There is no dramatization, no exaggeration, just the careful unspooling of truth as it exists, laid bare for your awareness. The precision of their reflection feels deliberate, almost reverent, as if the act of writing was sacred, designed to convey effort, intention, and accountability simultaneously. There is an undercurrent of emotional bravery in the way the letter is structured. You notice subtle choices, the pauses, the careful sentence flow, and the spaces left for thought. Each paragraph carries rhythm and weight, guiding your mind and heart to move slowly, to engage fully, and to absorb without distraction. It becomes apparent that this is not simply a letter to be read, it is a dialogue across time, intention, and awareness. You realize that the writer has anticipated your attention and has shaped their communication to meet it with honesty, care, and patience. The layers of emotional texture deepen as you progress. Some sentences bring a quiet ache, not from sorrow alone, but from recognition. Recognition of effort, of reflection, and of courage required to confront oneself and communicate openly. There is acknowledgement of mistakes, times when words were left unsaid, actions misaligned with intention, and moments of absence, but these admissions are presented without defensiveness or self-justification. Instead, they are paired with awareness, growth, and a subtle hope that understanding can emerge naturally, without pressure or demand. As you continue, the letter begins to reveal its unique rhythm, alternating between observation, vulnerability, and reflection. Short, sharp sentences land like deliberate touches, commanding attention, while longer passages provide space for contemplation and immersion. Pauses are embedded not only between lines but within them, a reminder that reflection requires time, and that engagement with authenticity cannot be rushed. This deliberate pacing creates an almost meditative effect. Reading becomes an act of presence, a conscious exercise in bearing witness to courage, honesty, and vulnerability simultaneously. The tenderness within the letter becomes increasingly evident. It is quiet, measured, and grounded. You notice that it is not a sentimental tenderness, nor is it meant to manipulate emotion. It is deliberate care. The kind of care that emerges when someone has faced their own truths fully and then chooses to offer them to another human being with respect, humility, and intention. That tenderness resonates deeply within you, stirring awareness of both your own heart and the effort invested in these words. Within this emotional texture, there is also a subtle invitation, a call to reflect not just on what is written, but on what it represents. This letter asks for presence rather than action, awareness rather than reaction. It reminds you that connection is not built solely on what is said or done, but on the deliberate offering of truth, effort, and courage. The writer does not request immediate reconciliation, response, or judgment, they only offer their reflection and trust your capacity to receive it fully. That trust itself is profound, it is a rare gift, quietly demanding recognition and appreciation. As the letter progresses, you notice the careful interweaving of accountability and empathy. Past mistakes and missteps are acknowledged without deflection, yet the tone is never punitive. There is an understanding that human experience is layered, and that every action exists within context, intention, and consequence. This awareness is palpable, almost tactile, as you read. It is a reminder that authentic communication requires both responsibility and empathy. The courage to speak truth, and the insight to temper it with understanding. The deeper you read, the more you feel the intentionality behind every word. There are moments where the letter almost feels like a map, guiding you through the terrain of shared experience, emotional growth, and reflection. You sense the writer's patience, the quiet diligence in capturing their thoughts accurately, and the courage required to expose vulnerability without expectation. You begin to understand that the letter is as much an act of self-reflection as it is a message to you. It is a mirror that reflects effort, awareness, and the conscious choice to reach out fully. By the final sections, a clarity settles over you, a quiet understanding that this letter is not about what must happen next, it is about what has been offered, witnessed, and received. Presence has been exchanged in its purest form, deliberate, authentic, and uncoerced. The emotional weight has shifted from urgency to resonance, from vulnerability to connection. You feel gratitude, not only for the act of writing, but for the courage it took to confront self, reflect, and reach across distance to offer authenticity. Setting the letter aside, you feel a subtle, enduring imprint. It is not closure, nor is it finality. Instead, it is a marker, a touchstone, and a quiet reminder that intentional communication, vulnerability, and presence carry resonance far beyond the moment of reading. You carry this awareness with you, understanding that courage, reflection, and honesty in human connection are rare, powerful, and transformative. The letter has not simply communicated words. It has created space, cultivated presence, and left an imprint of authenticity that lingers in your awareness, shaping perception, emotion, and the potential for connection in ways that will continue to unfold long after the page is folded. You approach the letter once more, and this time there is a subtle stillness in the air, as if the room itself is waiting with you. It is different from the other times you've opened it. There is a quiet anticipation, not born from expectation, but from recognition, that each reading has been a journey, and this one carries the sense of culmination. The envelope feels familiar in your hands, yet the weight is different, heavier in an invisible way, full of all the accumulated courage, reflection, and unspoken intention that has been folded into its pages. You pause before unfolding it, breathing slowly, allowing yourself to be fully present for what is about to unfold. From the very first sentence, you are struck by the simplicity of the words. They are not elaborate, not dramatic, but deliberate. Each phrase carries gravity because it has been chosen with care, because it represents thought that has been lived and wrestled with before being committed to paper. You realize that this is not just a letter, it is a culmination of intention, reflection, and vulnerability, and that its impact depends on your ability to meet it with the same level of presence that created it. The opening paragraphs revisit familiar memories, but in a way that feels different this time. There is a depth, a layering, that was not fully apparent before. The writer revisits moments of silence, absence, and misunderstanding, yet now you notice the subtleties, the small acknowledgments of what was felt but unspoken, the recognition of your own role in the shared experience, and the gentle tracing of patterns that were difficult to face. There is no accusation here, no plea, only reflection and the quiet offering of awareness. As you move deeper into the letter, the writing begins to breathe in a way that almost feels alive. Short sentences land with precision, cutting through distraction, while longer passages flow like a river, carrying you through emotion, reflection, and recognition. There is a rhythm here that mirrors the human heart, moments of contraction and release, tension and stillness, vulnerability and courage. Each paragraph allows space for presence, inviting you to fully inhabit the experience without judgment or rush. The vulnerability of the writer becomes increasingly apparent. There is no performative emotion, no attempt to manipulate or soften the impact of past missteps. Instead, there is accountability paired with empathy, an understanding of the consequences of actions, and a reflection on the lessons learned. You feel the courage it took to confront oneself fully, and the subtle power of witnessing that courage resonates within you. The letter asks nothing in return, yet its impact is profound because the act of writing has already carried intention, effort, and presence. As the middle sections unfold, you notice an underlying tenderness that grows steadily. It is not sentimental, but deliberate care, a quiet attentiveness that honors both the writer's experience and yours. The letter recognizes complexity, human imperfection, and the delicate interplay between reflection and understanding. Each line is measured, each pause intentional, and every thought carries the energy of someone who has faced themselves, considered the past, and reached across the distance with honesty and courage. There is also an unmistakable invitation embedded within the letter. It is not a call to act, forgive, or reconcile. Instead, it invites presence, acknowledgement, and reflection. You are asked to witness, to engage, and to absorb the effort without the pressure of response. The subtle insistence is on awareness and connection, on recognizing that intentional vulnerability is as much an offering to the self as it is to the recipient. This dynamic creates a dialogue, unspoken yet deeply felt, that bridges distance, time, and emotion. The deeper you read, the more the letter functions as both mirror and guide. It reflects the writer's growth, courage, and understanding while simultaneously offering you insight into the shared journey and your own awareness. It highlights patterns, lessons, and subtle shifts that have occurred over time, encouraging contemplation and presence. You begin to sense that the letter is as much about your capacity to witness and reflect as it is about the writer's honesty. It is an invitation to meet authenticity with acknowledgement, and to recognize the transformative power of deliberate, courageous communication. Toward the final sections, the clarity of the letter becomes striking. The urgency of vulnerability gives way to the resonance of intentionality. You notice that this communication is not about closure, resolution, or action. It is about presence, reflection, and the conscious acknowledgement of effort. Each paragraph, carefully crafted, serves as a testament to human courage, the power of honest expression, and the resonance of intentional engagement. You feel the subtle imprint of these truths within your own awareness, as if the act of reading has shifted the lens through which you perceive connection, effort, and vulnerability. The last paragraphs carry a quiet strength. There is acknowledgement, gratitude, and an almost imperceptible hope embedded in the phrasing. A hope that the recipient will meet the act of writing with awareness, that the presence offered will be recognized, and that the resonance of effort will extend beyond the words themselves. You feel the weight of this intention settle within you, not as pressure, but as a lasting reminder of the power of conscious, deliberate, and authentic communication. When you finally set the letter down, there is a lingering stillness, a space created by presence and vulnerability that is neither empty nor complete, but alive. The act of reading has become a shared experience, a connection that transcends the page. You carry forward not just the words, but the energy of courage, reflection, and intentionality. The imprint of someone who dared to face themselves fully, who trusted you with that honesty, and who created a space for connection that is rare, profound, and enduring. This final reading leaves you with the understanding that true connection is measured not in immediate responses, reconciliation, or closure, but in presence, attention, and the acknowledgement of effort. Vulnerability, courage, and honesty are forces that ripple far beyond the moment of expression. They shape perception, reflection, and understanding in ways that cannot be ignored. The letter has offered you this gift, and the responsibility of receiving it is not to act, but to witness, to carry the resonance forward and allow it to inform your own approach to presence, authenticity, and human connection. In the quiet aftermath, you sense a shift in perspective, a deepened awareness of the subtleties of effort, the courage embedded in honesty, and the transformative potential of deliberate communication. You recognize that the act of writing, the courage to expose vulnerability, and the intention to reach across distance have created more than words, they have created presence, connection, and understanding. And you feel, deeply, that this experience will linger, shaping not only your perception of the letter, but your approach to connection, reflection, and authenticity in every dimension of your life.
As you near the final sections, a sense of clarity begins to settle. The urgency of vulnerability transforms into the quiet resonance of intentions. You notice that this communication is not about resolutions, reconciliations, or closure. It is about presence, reflections, and acknowledgement. Every word carefully chosen carries the energy of honesty, courage, and deliberate effort. You feel the subtitle imprint of this quality within your own consciousness, a quiet awareness that will ripple outward into your perfection of human connection, effort, and authenticity. The closing paragraph are understand but powerful. They contain acknowledgement of shared history, reflection of growth, and gentle hope that later will be received that awareness. There is no pleading on demand for action, no emotional manipulation. Instead, there is a quiet trust that the act of reading, the effort invested, and the courage displayed will be recognized and appreciated. When you finally lay the letter down, a quiet stillness envelopes you. It is a space that is neither empty nor complete, but alive, a space created by the convergence on the vulnerability, presence, and the deliberate intentions. The letter has offered more than words. It has offered consciousness, courage, and a template for authentic human engagement. You carry this awareness forward, knowing the act of witnessing, reflecting, and receiving presence is itself transformative. The final reading leaves you with the profound understanding true connection is not measured by responses, closure, or reconciliations. It is measured by presence, intentionality, and the courage to face truthfully, both in one's and in another. The letter has shown in you this. The impact is enduring. You sense that lesson embedded here about courage, vulnerability, and the interpersonal communication will shape your perception, your interaction, and your capacity of connecting long after the page is folded and the room returns to the silence. As you sit with this awareness, you recognize the extraordinary rarity of what has been offered. The act of facing oneself, reflecting with clarity, and reaching across distance to communicate honestly require a form of courage that is uncommon. You feel gratitude for having witnessed it, for having engaged fully, and for having absorbed the resonance of important presence. This parting moment is quiet yet profound. The latest is fulfilled its purpose not by providing answers, resolutions, or demands, but creating a space, a reminder that human connection, when approached with deliberate attention, vulnerability, and honesty, has more power to transcend distance, time, and circumstances, leaving behind a trace that shapes awareness, perceptions, and the capacity of authentic engagement forever. Here, this story ends. I hope you enjoy this story. If you enjoy, like to this video, comment to this video, and subscribe to my channel and join my membership to avoid any video and any story in this channel.